Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, Mysteries and Mammoths. It's my March wrap-up. So 14 books to talk to you about today for March, which is less than I sometimes do in these wrap-ups. Some of these books were really big, as you've just seen from that heavy stack I just lifted up. But the most important thing is, regardless of size, regardless of the number of books I read, I had a really fun reading month. So I took part in some events I really enjoyed and just had a good time reading. But it didn't feel like that from the start of the month. At the start of the month, I was feeling dangerously close to falling into a reading slump. And I think part of the reason for that was I was trying to read The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, the first of the Mistborn books. And I just couldn't get on with it. And I just kept on trying to read it and failing. And it nearly sucked my reading mojo out of me. I managed to get over that, though, and ended up having a really good reading month. But yeah, Mistborn, Brandon Sanderson is definitely not for me. As lots of people predicted he would not be when I put up a video a while ago saying, should I read Brandon Sanderson? Anyway, that's enough about what I didn't finish. Let's talk about what I did finish. So first thing I finished was Artificial Condition by Martha Wells, which is the second of the Murderbot series of books. So this is a fairly light series of sci-fi novels, short novels at that. Murderbot is a fantastic character, so part human, part machine, all sarcastic. So basically just wants to live their life, watching TV shows, but invariably has to do stuff to save humans. So this was very much a continuation of the first book in the series, and just really entertaining. I've got a bunch of them on audio and will continue listening to those. After that, read something completely different. So The Trading Game by Gary Stevenson, which I've done a review of on the channel. So this is a book about, a non-fiction book. Gary Stevenson was a young working class guy in London who ended up working for, I can't remember who it was now, Citibank, I think, as a trader, and made millions. So ended up being a millionaire, but then kind of had a crisis of faith, I guess, and realised that he was part of a system he didn't really agree with, and a system that encourages wealth inequality. So he's now a campaigner against wealth inequality, and this really is his memoir. So it's his life up until the point he's at now in his life. So talks about how he got into working as a trader, how he made his money and things like that, and then how he came to realise that it probably wasn't the right thing to be doing. So really interesting book, really well written as well, very gripping. I thought it was excellent. After that then, I read something nice and light and fun, Jericho Fools by Christopher Hyde, which is a fairly cheesy but enjoyable kind of 80s thriller, but with horror elements, about a small town in the States that gets a truck carrying like some kind of lethal virus that's travelling through the town, crashes, people get infected, it all goes horribly wrong. The military encircle the town and try and stop everyone getting out of it. So if that sounds like it appeals to you, this is definitely a book you'd enjoy. It was fast paced, it was enjoyable, had some decent characters, it was a lot of fun. I like that a lot. Next up then, Ripleys Game by Patricia Highsmith, so part of my ongoing read-through of all of the Ripley books, and indeed all of Patricia Highsmith's books. So Ripley is a great character, and I'm very much looking forward to the new Netflix TV series, which starts fairly soon, I think. I think it starts early April. So yeah, Ripley is this kind of con man character, an American living in Europe. In this book, he gets involved in this kind of slightly weird plot to assassinate some kind of mafia figures, where he pulls in an innocent guy to be the assassin. And it was just a really enjoyable, fun, tense thriller. Not Patricia Highsmith's best book by any means, but solidly entertaining. After that, for my Patreon reading club or book club, We read Six Rooms by Gemma and Amor. So each month my patrons and channel members pick a book for us to read. Six Rooms was this month's choice. I didn't love it, if I'm honest. I really liked Dear Laura, Gemma and Amor's kind of psychological horror novella, which I read a few years ago. Six Rooms I didn't enjoy as much. I couldn't quite figure out what she was trying to do with the story. So it's about this big mysterious house and a tour that's like being shown round the house. So it's a house you can go and look round. There's this slightly weird tour guide taking people on a tour around the house. Turns out the house is haunted. All sorts of bizarre stuff goes on. There were some quite effective horror scenes in the book, and some enjoyable bits of banter between characters and things like that. But overall, I didn't love it. Next up for March Mystery Madness, I read Fear Familiar by Caroline Haines. This was really fun. So this was a Harlequin romantic suspense novel from I think the 80s that was just crazy. So it involved a cat there were sections of the book written from the perspective of the cat. It involved a CIA plot. It involved weird experiments on animals, all sorts of stuff going on in this book. I really, really enjoyed it, and there's a whole series of them, so I will be reading more of them at some point. So yeah, if you like, I wouldn't exactly call it a cosy cat mystery because it wasn't really a cosy. It was more of a thriller in many ways, but it was really, really fun. After that, also for March Mystery Madness, I read Mystery of the Blue Train by Agatha Christie, one of the Hercule Poirot novels. So not the best Poirot novel, not up there with Murder on the Orient Express or something like that, but a really enjoyable mystery nevertheless. So Poirot investigating a murder on this blue train, this train that travels around Europe. There's a the most valuable diamond in the world that's been stolen. It's all that kind of stuff going on in it, and a really interesting, strong female character who's a young woman who worked as a companion for this rich woman, the woman has died and she's inherited the woman's money, so is now wealthy, and it's about members of the family trying to kind of ingratiate themselves with her and things like that. So yeah, a fun mystery. I enjoyed that a lot. Next up then, I read another mystery. So this is Bootlegger's Daughter by Margaret Maron, which I read with Hyde, one of my patrons, as a buddy read. This was a solidly enjoyable 90s mystery from the US. So set in, I always forget where it's set in North Carolina, about this woman who's an attorney in the town who is standing to become judge, so hoping to be elected as one of the judges in the town. So there was a lot of stuff about that election and about her campaigning for it and things like that, which was quite interesting. As someone from the UK, I find the concept of people who work in law enforcement and the law generally being elected slightly bizarre. It's certainly not how we do things over here. But yeah, a really interesting book. And she basically is investigating this cold case. So the murder of a woman that happened in the town kind of 20 years previously. So yeah, just a solidly enjoyable mystery. The town itself was really well portrayed. So you got a great kind of sense of place, as you sometimes do get in crime novels. I enjoyed it enormously. After that then, for the Week of Weird, which is an annual event reading where you read kind of weird fiction, I read A Botanical Daughter by Noah Medlock. So this has just came out during the Week of Weird, actually came out on the 19th of March. Really, really enjoyable. So I enjoyed this a lot. So this is a Victorian era or Victorian set novel about these two guys, one of whom is a botanist and one's a taxidermist, who are lovers and who create this daughter for themselves out of a corpse and some plants. If that sounds weird, that's why I read it for Week of Weird. It was really, really interesting. It's not desperately gripping or anything like that, not action-packed. Did have some decent scenes of horror, particularly towards the end. But mostly it was just kind of fascinating. It was just really interesting to watch the events of the book unfold. So yeah, enjoyed that a lot. Next up then, again for March Mystery Madness, we have Three Blind Mice by Ed McBain, which is the 9th of the Matthew Hope series of novels. So the theme for March Mystery Madness this year was To the Nines, because it's the ninth instalment, if you like, of March Mystery Madness. So yeah, this was a really enjoyable mystery. Matthew Hope is a lawyer who works in Florida. In this one, he's hired to represent a guy who's been accused of murder, and the people he's accused of murdering were themselves accused of raping his wife, but were then acquitted in the trial. So it was just a really interesting and enjoyable and intricate mystery. McBain was really good at doing this kind of stuff. And it's that kind of mystery where at the end, when you look back, you can see all the clues and you can see how you could have pieced the mystery together yourself if you'd been a bit more on the ball than I was. But yeah, really a solidly entertaining, gripping mystery. I enjoyed that a lot. Next up, another mystery. So this is The Murder Wheel by Tom Mead, which has this fantastic cover. I really do like the cover. The cover in the US for this book is just boring, but this cover is rather wonderful, I think. So this is the second in his series of books about a character called Spectre, who's a stage magician and kind of amateur investigator who helps the police out on cases. And they're always kind of locked rooms type cases. So set in the 30s, I think. Set in 1938, has a lovely kind of vintage feel to it. And in this one, the main mystery that's being investigated is the murder of a guy who was with his wife on a Ferris wheel. So just the two of them in the capsule or whatever you call it on the Ferris wheel. He was shot. It looks like his wife did it, and there's a kind of character who's central to the book, who's a lawyer who's defending her. So yeah, a really, really fun, engaging, vintage style mystery. If you like that kind of thing, I really do recommend Tom Mead. The third book in this series is coming out in a couple of months, I think, so really looking forward to that. Next up then, the book I read for March of the Mammoths. It took me about 3 weeks to read this, partly because it's a really figuratively heavy book. It's just, it's about horrible stuff, and it was difficult to read at times because of that, but also because it's literally heavy, and therefore I didn't want to be carting it to work in my bag to read on the train. So anyway, yes, The Kindly Ones by Jonathan Littell. So this is a book set during the Second World War, and it's basically like the memoir of an SS officer looking back on the war and looking back on the part he played in the war. So I am going to do a review of this. There's a lot to say about it. It's a very powerful book, very disturbing at times, and not exactly gripping, but equally, despite its size and the horrible nature of the content, because it is largely about the Holocaust. I found that I just wanted to keep reading it. I wanted to keep turning the pages and find out what happened. So yeah, really very powerful book and very interesting book as well. Okay, next up then, something completely different. So Flesh by Richard Laymon, which I read for Kelsey from Slime and Slash's Year of Laymon, where she's reading a Richard Laymon book each month and invites people to join in. I've joined in so far. This might be the last one I do in the Year of Laymon, because I really didn't enjoy this, and I really didn't enjoy the book last month either. So I can see why people might like this. It's very fast-paced. It's about this weird blue worm thing that infects people and makes them go homicidal. But it just didn't click with me. I didn't find any of the characters interesting. I really didn't care what was happening. So whilst it was full of sex and violence and things like that, which might sound like it makes it an appealing, cheesy read, I just didn't get on with it at all. And then finally, another huge book, although not quite a mammoth. This edition is 686 pages. I suspect there must be a smaller paperback edition that's over 800 pages, because this is a big old book. But anyway, The Dark Tower, book 7 in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, so the final book in the series. I will be going back and reading The Wind Through the Keyhole, which takes place kind of midway through the series but was published after the rest of the series, if that makes sense. This was really good. I liked this. I know a lot of people have problems with the end of the book, but I thought I liked the end of the book. I thought it felt like a natural, convincing ending. It's a big old book, and there's definitely problems with the Dark Tower series overall. I am going to do a review when I've read Wind Through the Keyhole. I'm going to do a review of the whole series, but I think it's it shows King's strengths in some of the characters are really engaging. It can be really, really gripping, really tense, really enjoyable to read, but it also kind of meanders all over the place. You definitely get the impression that he didn't know what the ending was going to be, or have even a clue of what the ending was going to be when he wrote the earlier books in the series. And I think that is one of his failings as a writer, is he doesn't always feel completely joined up in his storytelling. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it a lot. Okay, so that is what I read in March then. Looking very much forward to reading more great stuff in April. Hope you had a good reading month in March. Let me know what you read. Let me know if you took part in any of the reading events I talked about. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Oh, I forgot to say what my favourite book of the month is. That's terrible. I was on autopilot there. Apologies. Right, so I think my favourite book of the month, it's going to be a toss-up. Because they're two completely different books. So either the Kindly Ones, because I really do think this is probably a great book. It's really interesting, like meticulously researched, absolutely horrific, but absolutely horrific with a purpose. So I thought that was an excellent book. But I also, just for pure fun, The Murder Wheel is hard to beat. I really, really had a very good time with this book. So I'm going to give joint first place this month to these two books. Anyway, I will leave it there for now and say, as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.